So let me introduce Bill Browder, who's been called the #1 enemy of President Putin, which, as we know, is not a comfortable place to be. Bill was a foreign investor who set up a business in Russia in the late 80s, but they clearly didn't like the money he was making, and he was chased by the authorities, who ended up capturing his lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, who was then beaten to death in a Russian jail. Bill has been campaigning ever since. In 2012, after Bill lobbied the US Congress for sanctions against powerful Russians, President Obama signed into law the so-called Magnitsky Act. Mr. Putin was furious.
В основе всех произошедших событий лежит противоправная деятельность целой группы лиц во главе с известным господином, по-моему, Браудер его фамилия, который 10 лет жил в Российской Федерации в качестве туриста и занимался фактически незаконной деятельностью. Скупал акции российских компаний, не имея на это права, не будучи резидентом Российской Федерации. Десятки и сотни миллионов долларов выводил за границу. Уходил при этом от налогов как в России, так и в Соединенных Штатах.
So that was President Putin talking about you?
He spends a lot of time talking about me, actually. He
doesn't like the business model of foreign investors coming in. This is going back, isn't it? But buying shares and taking the money out, basically.
No, that wasn't what he was mad about. So what happened was I went and invested in Russia. I was the largest foreign investor in Russia on behalf of my clients. I discovered corruption, big corruption, stealing out of these big Russian companies. I then started to go to the press and expose the corruption. And as a result, the guys who were getting all this money, including Vladimir Putin, got mad. And you should understand that Russia is a kleptocracy. It's a place where if you're in the government, the whole purpose of being in government is to steal as much money as possible. And here all of a sudden, you've got this guy from America with an American accent coming in and screaming about all of their dirty deals. And he wanted me nowhere near that. So he kicked me out of the country. He declared me a threat to national security. They raided my offices. They arrested my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky. They tortured him for 358 days, and they killed him in Russian police custody 9 years ago. And the Magnitsky Act, named after Sergei Magnitsky, my lawyer, imposes visa sanctions and asset freezes, and the second part is really important, asset freezes, on the people who did this and the people who do similar types of things.
And I understand the reason that Putin is particularly angry is it's the first time governments have gone for individuals, which is the one thing that hurts them. Is that right?
Well, so first of all, these individuals have a lot of money. They keep all the money in the West. This sanction goes after their money. And so they're personally affected by this. In the old days, when governments did sanctions, they would sanction the people. So the U.S. government would sanction the Iranian people, and then the Iranian leaders would take in 747s full of caviar and champagne for the leadership of the country and not for the people. Now all of a sudden, this whole thing is turned on its head. The people are being left alone, but the guys, the top guys, are having their money frozen, and that infuriates them.
And I've read Bill's book. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Red Notice. It's a fantastic book to read. So it's all about how you suddenly discover they put out an international alert to try and get you back to Russia. And if Interpol go with it and you go back to Russia, God knows what happens.
We know exactly what will happen. They'll kill me. They'll torture me and kill me.
But how do you know you're safe today?
Well, I'm not safe today. So they've threatened me with murder. They've threatened me with kidnapping. As you mentioned, red notices from Interpol, extradition requests. I was in Spain at the end of May. I was there actually to meet with the Spanish prosecutor to inform him about money, dirty Putin crony money coming into Spain. And an hour and a half before my meeting with the Spanish prosecutor, a different division of the Spanish police had been alerted by Russia on an Interpol arrest warrant to arrest me. And I was arrested in Spain on an Interpol Russian arrest warrant.
Can I ask, it's fascinating this, that, there have been 12 requests from Russia for your extradition. You know that by carrying on talking about Putin and Russia, that you are making yourself a target. Why do you keep doing it?
Well, for the primary reason is that Sergei Magnitsky, who was my lawyer, was 37 years old, and he was brutally tortured for 358 days in detention and killed. And he was killed because he was my lawyer.
But they could do that to you, too.
They could, but if he was in prison and he was doing the right thing by me, and he was doing the right thing in terms of not making up stories and bearing false witness and perjuring himself, in much more dangerous conditions, and he gave up his life for me, effectively.
They arrested him, didn't they? Because he found the money trail. He found where the money that was stolen was going.
He found where the Russian, where the dirty Russian money went, and he exposed it, and he exposed a whole bunch of people. And so, I mean, for me, I couldn't live with myself if I wasn't trying to get justice for him.
But you say that the West has massive leverage in stopping corruption by we could seize assets, we could, that are being held in banks here. Why aren't we doing it in Britain? We're not doing it.
Well, that's a very good question. And the reason I believe that we're not doing it here is because there are so many people feeding at the trough. There's so many there's fancy people, with good accents and great educations from fancy firms that are feeding at the Russian trough. And they want to keep on feeding at that trough. And those people have a lot of political influence in this country. And it's effectively, in my estimation, treason for these people to be doing that.